Hello everyone, in this video we're going to be building a cryptocurrency application using the CoinCap API and ReactJs, where we're going to be getting the rank, the name, and the price in US dollars of the cryptocurrency and then displaying them in this table. When you scroll to the bottom, you're going to have the next and the refresh buttons. So what the next button does is, if you look to the top right, currently it says showing 20 coins, right? If you click on the next button, it's going to fetch another 20 coins and it's going to append them to this table, and then it's going to update this counter. So let's try it out. You can see now it says showing 40 coins, and you can tell that the table now shows 40 items, and you can go ahead and click on next again and it's going to show you 60 items, and so on and so forth. The current cap for this is about 2,200 items, so you can click away to your heart's content. I chose 20 just for the showcase, and I chose these 3 pieces of information for the showcase as well. Now when you click on the refresh button, what is going to happen is it's going to set the number of items in this table back to 20, and then it's going to throw you back to the top, and then it's going to update this counter back to 20. So let's try it out. As you can see right here, now it says showing 20 items. We are back to the top and the rank still remains the same. The repository we're going to be using is called CoinCap Crypto App, and you can click the link in the description if you want to head over into this repository. Okay, so let's get started. So once you canvas a new React application, then you should have a file structure similar to what you're seeing on the left. And what I've done is, inside my source folder and inside my app.js, I've deleted all the boilerplate and I'm returning an H1 that says crypto app inside a React fragment. And then this commented part is the link to the API that we're going to be using. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my terminal using Ctrl and J, and then I'm going to run my dev server using npm run start. Okay, and you can see that this opens up on localhost 3000, and we have crypto app as our H1 right there. So let's begin building out our table first of all. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove this, and I'm going to create our table here with the T head here and table rows, and this table row is going to say TH, so 3 of them. So this first one is going to say rank, the second one is going to say the name, and then this third one is going to say the price. Oops, can't type in USD. There we go. And then below this T head, we're going to have a T body with a table row here. Oops, table row. And then this table row is going to have table details. So let's just have some dummy data here. So rank 1, name is going to be Bitcoin, and then the price is going to be let's just say 20. And then you can save this, and this is what we're going to have on the screen once this reloads. Okay, and you can see that now we have a rank of 1, the name is Bitcoin, and the price is USD. So I just want to move this to the center and style it out a bit. So I'm going to go inside my CSS and access this table. So inside my index.css, I can remove this now. And then I'm going to say table, and I'm just going to say set this width to 100%, and look what this does. There we go. So it sets it to 100% of the device. And then I'm just going to say text align center so that this text moves to the center as well. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is, let me show you something. Let's go inside the table and let's say the T head, and then let's give this a background color of hashtag 10B581, which is a tailwind emerald green. There we go. Now look at these spaces. Do you see these spaces? This is because the table has a collapsible value. Okay, so we're going to remove that because I don't want these spaces, right? So inside the table, I'm going to say border collapse and set this to collapse, and that is going to remove that. Okay, and then I want this text to be white, right? So right below this, I'm going to say set this color to white. There we go. And then probably I can do something like text dash, oh sorry, font size. I'm so used to typing CSS. Font size, set this to 2 rem. Increase this a bit, that's too big. 1.25 rem, 20 pixels. There we go. And then let's add some padding. So padding of 1.25 rem all round. Oh sorry, that doesn't work because we need to go inside the table row. So let's go inside the table, and then the T head and the TR here, and then grab this and push it downwards. Really? Should it be inside the TH? Okay, there we go. And then what I want to do is I want to limit the entirety of this table so that it doesn't span all the way to the end. And how I'm going to do that is inside my app.js, inside this fragment, I'm going to return a section here with a class name, and I'm going to give this a class name of coins, like so. And then what I'm going to do is right above this table, I'm going to access the coins class. And then I'm just going to set this max width here to, let's say, 900 pixels. Then let's see how this looks. It's going to push it to the left. And then now we want to push this to the center by setting the margin here to auto. And there we go. And then probably what I should do is set a margin on the top, right? I should probably set a margin on the top so that this pushes downwards. So let me say margin of 5 rem on the top and bottom, and auto on the left and right. There we go. And then this text is a bit too big, so let me just reduce it a bit. Let me take it back to 1 rem, and then reduce this padding as well to 1 rem. There we go. And then now I'm going to add a bit more rows here because we want to add a bit of like zebra style of styling to it. So let's go inside here, and then let's copy this table row. So copy this about 2 more times. So we're going to have this, okay? And then now what we're going to do is we're going to say for the table, we want the T body. And then inside the T body, we want the table row and we want the table details, okay? And then what I'm going to do here is give this padding of 1 rem, push it out just a bit. And then here we're going to give a background color of red. I'm just testing this to see whether it's working. Okay, it's working. Now what I want to do is for every second item, let me save this. For every second item, so starting here, I want this to be a slightly gray background color. So how we can do that is using pseudo classes. So I'm just going to copy this and say that for the nth child, and then for the even number, on the even number, and I'm going to set this background color to hashtag E5, E5, E5. And then let's see. And this is not what I want to happen. I want the table row. So let's say the table row, right? There we go. So we access the table row and not the table details, okay? So that is working correctly, as you can see. So the more items that you add, if I were to add a 4th item here, then you see that the 4th item is also going to have the grayed out background color, okay? And then let's add our buttons on the bottom. So right around below this table, I'm going to add a div here with a class of buttons. And then I'm going to have a first button that says next. And then I'm going to have a second button that says refresh. Refresh. Okay. There we go. And then these buttons are just going to be styled the same way. So there's not much to do here. So let's access the buttons class. So below this, I'm going to say the dot buttons class. And I want the buttons. Okay. Where I'm going to set this background color to hashtag 10b581. I'm going to give this a padding of 0.625 rem on the top and bottom, which is 10 pixels, and 1.25 rem on the left and right, which is 20 pixels. And then I'm going to remove the border, so border none. And then I also want to remove the outline, so outline none. And then I want to add a border radius of 0.3 rem, just to have it slightly rounded just a bit. And then we want to change the font family, set this to inherit so that it takes the font family of the body, push this upwards, and then we can change the color of the text to white. So color, change this to white. There we go. And then we can do something like font size, set this to 1 rem, because by default I think it's about 12 pixels for the buttons. I think so, I'm not so sure. And then let's go inside the actual buttons, the dot buttons div, and then I can say display flex, align item center, and justify content to space between, which should take them to the end, like so. Okay, so once these 2 items are to the end, I want this button to span and take up this remaining white space, right? So you can do that using 2 ways, and I'm going to show you both ways. The first that you can do is by adding a width of 100%, which does this, okay? So if I comment this out, it goes back to the end. And the second way you can do this is by setting a flex grow of 1 here, and you can see that it's exactly the same thing. Okay, now probably what you're going to do when you have the flex of 1 is that you're going to have to add a bit of margin here to separate these buttons, and you can do that by just going into the dot buttons, and for the button, and just say that for the first child you can set the margin on the right to 1 rem, which is 16 pixels, and then this happens. Okay, and if you don't want to do this, I can comment this out, and I can comment the flex of 1 out so that they go all the way to the end again. You can replace the width here. So instead of having the width to 100% here, you can play around with this and set it to about, let's say 40%. There we go. So let's say about 45. Let's see how this looks. You can see you can just play around with it, and you can set it to the actual amount of space that you want. Okay, so I don't want to use the width, so I'm going to comment this out. I'm going to use the flexbox instead, and there we go. Okay, and then let's set the cursor to pointer for these buttons. So right around here, let me copy this and set the hover state for it. So on hover, I want the cursor to be pointer, and then on hover, I want to reduce the opacity by a bit. So opacity, I'm going to set this to 0.75, and then I'm going to add a transition here, transition, and I'm going to say transition the opacity by 0.3 seconds, and then ease in out for the cubic Bezier curve, and there we go. Look at this. Okay, so slight interactions, not so bad. Let's set this to 0.1 maybe. Yeah, 0.1 is much better for me. And then of course, let's add a bit of margin on top of this buttons class. So right here, let's say margin top, set this to 1 rem, or let's say 2 rem. Okay, so the reason I've chosen to do it like this is because we deal with all our styling first, and then now all we have to do is just populate our table. So let's go ahead and begin to fetch our data. And what I'm going to do is, on top of this, I'm going to import use state, and use effect from React. And then I'm going to set up my state value. So I'm going to say const coins and set coins. This is equal to use state, and by default is going to be an empty array because we're going to populate it once we fetch our data. And then we're going to have another state value here, which is going to be changing the limit, which is currently set to 20, so that when we click on the button of next on the bottom here, then it's going to increase this limit by 20, which will change it to 40 and 60 and 80 and 100 and so on and so forth. Okay, so we're going to do that later once we have fetched our data. So let's go ahead and say for the use e effect, and I'm going to say const fetch coins. We're going to be using the async await. So fetch coins equal to async, and I'm going to say const res equals to await fetch, and I'm going to place this inside backticks because remember I want this to be a variable, right? And then I'm just going to copy this and paste it inside here, and then I'm going to say const data equals to await res.json. Okay, and then you can console log the data to see what you get back, and then remember to call the function called fetch coins like so. And let's see, if you want to see what you have on the screen, you can return an h1 here that says coins.length here, which is going to return the number of items that we get back once we fetch our data. So let's save this. Let's see what we have. And we have 0. What do we have? 0. Oh, this returns wait a minute, what was the return here? This returns an object. Okay, so we need to set it into data.data, which is the array. So console log data.data. There we go. So now we get an array. So now what we therefore need to do is we need to set coins into data.data, which is going to populate this empty array here. So I'm going to say set coins into data.data. Okay, and then now this should now say 20 because we are fetching 20 items by default, as you can see. So let's see that, and now you can see we have 20 items, so that is working correctly. Okay, now I've just realized something. I want to add a bit of padding on the left and right so that this table doesn't go all the way to the end of the screen. So what I'm going to do is inside the coins class, which I have here, I'm going to add a padding of 0 on the top and bottom and 1.25 rem on the left and right, which just pushes this inwards, looking much better. And realize something. Notice how the console log is always continuing, right? We want to stop that by adding an empty dependency array here so that it only runs on the initial render of the app component. Otherwise, we're going to run out of requests. Okay, request to the API, I mean. Okay, so inside here, we're going to be getting a few items. We're going to get the ID, we're going to get the name, we're going to get the price in US dollars, and then we're going to get the rank. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So right around here now, instead of returning table row like this, right, we're going to remove this. And what I'm going to do is inside here, we're going to map over our data, and we can remove this H1. So inside here, I'm going to say coins.map. And then I'm going to destructure all the items that we need. We need the ID, the name, the rank, and we need the price in USD. And then we're going to be returning table rows. And this is going to have a key of ID like so. And then what do we need to do? We need to have table details. So 3 of them. So 1, 2, 3. This first one is going to say the name. Sorry, the first one is going to be the rank, right? The rank. And then this second one is going to say the name. And then this third one is going to say the price in USD. So we can save that and look at the table that we're going to have populated all the way to the bottom, as you can see. So what we do need to realize is that the numbers, the price in USD that we're seeing on the screen are actually strings in the GET request that we sent to the API. As you can see right here, this is a string. So we need to convert this string into a number, and then we can convert it into 2 decimal points, which is what we want, right? So that's easy enough to do. What we're going to do is right inside the price USD, we're going to say pass float like so, and pass in price USD. And then outside of this yellow bracket, we're going to say to fixed, and we want it to be 2 decimal points. There we go. And we should see that. Look at that, looking much better, right? And then we want to have the $sign ahead of this, so we can just return $sign there. And there we go. Would you look at that? Very easy to do. Very easy. Now all we need to do is just work on the functionality of the next and refresh, and then we need to add our counter on the top right. So actually, you know what, let's begin with our counter because that is much more interesting to me. So what I'm going to do is inside here, I'm going to return an article. And this article is just going to say a paragraph here that says showing coins.length coins, like so. And we should see it right here. So let's go ahead and style it out. Let me give this article, actually not, we only have one article, right? Yeah, we can just style it as an article. So inside the coins, let me check this out, the coins article. Okay, so inside the dot coins, I want to access the article, give this a background color of hashtag E5E5E5. Okay, give this a padding of 0.3 rem all around. Let me see how this looks. That's too big. Let's say 0.1. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I want to set this as absolute, so set the position to absolute, and I want to take it right here. So I'm going to say set it to the top by 1.25 rem, and then set it to the right by 1.25 rem. We should bring it here. There we go. And then what is this excess padding? What is it? Oh, you know what? It's because we haven't reset our style. So let's reset everything inside here and set the margin to 0, set the padding to 0. Let's set the box sizing to border box, and that gets rid of that. As you can see, much better, right? That's why it's important to add this. So let's go back into our paragraph and let's go inside the article right here. We can increase the padding. Where is it? Here, padding to 1 rem. Let me see how this looks. Now 0.5 rem. Okay, so showing 20 coins, let's add a border radius. So border radius of 0.3 rem all around. Okay, we can add a box shadow, or you can add a box shadow if you want. Really, I'm not going to do that. Now what we need to do is we want this to scroll with us as we scroll. So instead of setting it to position absolute, we can set it to position fixed. And then now look at this. Now it's always going to be fixed to the top right, as you can see. Fantastic. Now let's work on our next and refresh buttons. And remember that this is dynamic, so every time that the coins changes here, the number of items inside the coins array changes, then this is also going to be updated That's why it's able to be updated just by adding this line here. So let's go ahead and say we're going to add click events on the next button and then on the refresh button. So I'm going to say on click, I want to pass in an inline function here, and we're going to create a state value for this, but we have not created it yet. And the state value is going to be called page and set page. So I'm going to say set page inside here, or rather not set page really, but set limit into limit plus 20. Okay, so let's go ahead and create these state values so that I can explain this better. So right here, I'm going to say const limit and set limit. This is equal to use state, and by default use state, not use page. By default is going to be 20. Okay, and 20 because we are fetching 20 of them by default. So let's go ahead and change this and set it into a variable. That's why I added backticks here instead of a string, and I'm just going to set this to limit. Okay, so what this does, what this request is going to do is that it's going to check our state value called limit, and then it's going to pass in the number that we have as the default, which is 20. And then what the next button will do is that it's going to increase the default number of 20 by 20. Okay, such that when you click on the next button, instead of the limit now being 20 as it is here, is now going to be 40, and then when you click it again, it's going to be 60, and so on and so forth. So that's what this does. Okay, and the refresh button, when we click on this, all we need to do is just say pass in our inline function as well again, and then set the limit here to 20. So reset it back to 20. Okay, so let's save this and then we can try it out. Okay, so you can see that we fetch our data, and then we can click on next. Click on next. Oh, nothing happens because now we need to set limit as a dependency array in our get request in our use effect, because now the get request here is dependent on the limit. So every time that the limit changes, then we want this request to be run. So that's why we're going to pass it here as a dependency array. Okay, and then we can save this and we can try it out again. So click on next, and there we go. Now we have 40, and you notice how we clicked so many times. We clicked it so many times. Now we have all of this, right? Okay, so we can click on it. Now you can see that it says showing 160 coins, right? You can click on next, it's going to say 180, and so on and so forth. And when you click on refresh, it should say 20. But you do notice something. We have clicked on refresh, but we're still on the bottom. So I want that when you click on refresh, we should go back to the top. So what you can do is inside our function here, you can extract this into a different function, or what you can do is right inside here, you can cut this out and pass in another set of brackets here and set the limit to 20 here, and then also add a line here called window.scroll to and set it to scroll to 00, which is the top left of the browser. And then you can save that, and then now we can click on next here, and then when you click on refresh, it pops us back to the top. Now technically this isn't really recommended to do in React. Like when you begin to add multiple lines inside here, it is much more recommended to extract this into a different function. Okay, and you know what, let's just go ahead and do that. So I'm going to cut this out, and then inside here I'm going to pass in a function called handle refresh, which we're going to create on top of this. So const handle refresh equals to an arrow function, and then we're just going to pass this in. Okay, and you can test out whether it is working. So click on next, okay, and then click on refresh, and you can see that it is working the very same way. The final thing that I want to do is I just want to add a flag on the top that says this uses the CoinCap API. So right above this, I'm going to add an h1 that says this app uses the, and then I'm going to add an href, https to coincap.io, and say CoinCap API, and we're going to have this text, and I'm going to add some inline styling to this. So style equals to an object here that says text align, set this to center, and then margin, can't see really, margin bottom, set this to about 1 rem. Okay, that is much better. So yeah, that is going to be the end of the video. We have added some few bits of functionality here and there, such as this absolute positioning, and we were able to get data from the API and display it in a table. And I should mention that I really hate working with tables, but I hope that you learned something new. And yeah, if you've reached this far, please subscribe to the channel and like the video, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.